Hi, friends. Thanks for tuning in to the All Means All podcast here in Boise, Idaho. My name is Stacie Ballard, and I am the Children and Family Life pastor here at Cathedral of the Rockies. Today is Children's Sabbath Sunday, and I am so excited that you are tuning in to hear the message that I have in store. We're going to be talking about children and youth and how difficult it is to minister to them in today's changing world, and how you can be a part of that, how you can be a part of creating places of belonging for them and spaces where they know without a shadow of a doubt that they are loved. Well, good morning. My name is Stacie, and I am one of the pastors here at Cathedral of the Rockies. It is so good to be with you in worship this morning. Well, as we start our time together, I'd like to invite you to do a little bit of reflecting this morning. Reflect on how old you were when you first came to faith. When you first got to know Jesus, how old were you? When I was first invited to be in a relationship with Jesus, I was in 3rd grade. I was at a kids' summer camp with other 3rd graders from my church. So I grew up in church my whole life. I had countless adults invest in me in my youth, and if it were not for them, I would not be a pastor today. I know what it is to be a part of a faith community that loves children and youth well. I know what it feels like to have parents that are not your own step in to pray for you when your parents couldn't stay for a drop-off at a youth trip. I know what it feels like to have an older couple in church step forward and offer to pay for all my books through college. If it were not for these adults investing in me, showing up every week to children's church, showing up at youth group, inviting me to help lead in worship, I would not know who Jesus is. I am a product of a church that loves young people. And now I have the privilege of empowering the church to do the same for future generations. I'm the Children and Family Life pastor here, and I've had the joy of working with children, youth, and their families for about 15 years now in church ministry. And as we look to the scriptures today, we're going to take a look at Psalm 78. You see, throughout the scriptures, we see God placing this call, and really, if we're being honest, it's a mandate on the church to pass on our faith to future generations. And that then, too, those generations would continue to care for future generations and teach them what it looks like to love God and love others. Now, the book of Psalms is a book of poetry, a book of songs. So you can almost imagine these words being sung, okay? I've been telling our other services this morning, you don't want me to sing these words. I don't want you to leave quite yet, right? So just imagine there's a melody as you read these words. Psalm 78, verses 6-7 reads, God commanded our ancestors to teach their children so the next generation would know his commands, even the children yet to be born, and they in turn would tell their children. Then they would put their trust in God and would not forget his deeds, but would keep his commands. This is the word of the Lord. After this, the psalmist continues on to share about the things that God has done and tells them that they need to continue teaching their children these same things so that their children can grow up and learn and live well. And this is not the only place in Scripture where we see this call on the church to hand down the faith. We see this throughout the life and ministry of Moses, God calling the church to share who God is from generation to generation. Scripture talks about having Ebenezers, which are these objects that serve as a reminder, as a symbol to remind future generations of what God has done. We see it in other scriptures as well, like Genesis, where God talks about the covenant between God's self and future generations. And this year, in 2023, ministry to children, teens, and young adults has never been more crucial and more vital to the survival of the church. Ministry to children and youth has never looked the way that it looks right now. If we don't pass on the faith and we don't share with others what God has done and who God has created us to be, our faith will die out. There are those who say that it only takes 1 or 2 generations for an entire faith to die out. So this morning, we're going to take a look at where we are in this moment of the life of the church with children and teens. And then we're going to talk about how we pass on our faith to them, what we are already doing as a church to meet them where they are, and lastly, how you can be a part of it. So the question of how we reach young people is not a new one. The church has been asking this same question for a very, very long time. But the answer keeps changing depending on the generation we're talking about. Kids keep changing. The environment around our kids keeps changing. It's not even the same as what it was 4 years ago, right? And right now, the needs that kids have are extraordinary. I share the following with you because we as a church need to know that this moment in our history of the church is pivotal for the future of the church. There is an urgency for each and every one of us to invest in young people. Listen to these current statistics. This year, in 2023, nearly 1 in 3 children and youth experience some kind of anxiety disorder. Not just youth, right, but young children as well. Studies are showing that this is true for young children, 1 in 3, some kind of anxiety disorder. Over the last 3 years alone in the U.S., anxiety has tripled and depression has doubled. Pew Research came out with this article in 2022 sharing that based on the data they've collected, nearly half of all teenagers have experienced some form of cyberbullying at some point. These upcoming generations have so many layers of expectations placed on them, not just from their families, but also their peers, and they've inherited the messes of older generations as well. And in the midst of all of this, over the last 20 years or so, research is showing a steady decline in church attendance, especially for young people as they graduate from high school. In 2021, Church Pew Research came out with this graphic to illustrate the trends of church attendance, and the pandemic has only accelerated some of these trends since. Now, if you're looking closely there, you'll see that in 1972, 90% of Americans identified as Christians, and in 2021, only 65% of Americans identify as Christians. With nearly a 30% decrease across the board, when we explore the data on younger generations, 48% of Gen Z today consider themselves religiously unaffiliated. Nearly 44% of millennials, so those born between 1981 and 1996, are religiously unaffiliated. Now, what we can gather from this is that over time, we have lost our way in handing down our faith to the next generation. Most people make a faith commitment between the ages of 4 and 18 years old. And typically when that occurs, they're attending church. So when our young people don't attend church, they're not making those same level of commitments that we've seen in the past. The Fuller Youth Institute has done a lot of work on gathering data on young people and church trends over the last 15 years or so, taking in all of these things mentioned and more. And what they found was that the 3 biggest struggles kids are facing today, all while living in these realities, right, are discerning their identity, asking if they belong, and seeking to understand their purpose. So in simpler terms, to break that down, they are asking 3 questions. Who am I? Where do I fit? And what difference can I make? Which leads the church to ask yet again, what can we do? How do we come alongside and love these kids? And how do we hand down the faith to them? How do we tell kids who God says they are? How do we share with them that they belong here? How do we empower them to make a difference? Well, somewhere along the way, we started thinking that this job of handing down the faith only belongs to a select few, the really fun people. I'm sure you have some in mind, the extra fun people, the ones who connect really well with children and teens. Maybe even believing at times that this job is reserved just for the younger folks. right? There's a lot of reasons why only a few adults might choose to invest in the lives of young people. One of the things that we've seen is that without intentionality of focusing our resources, time, and talent on children and youth, is that as kids age out of our programs, and as people no longer have children in our programs, they stop volunteering their time, and they stop caring about those programs quite so much. But we have to continue to care about them. We have to continue to care about children and youth as if they are our own, because God has called us to. God has called us to hand down our faith generation to generation. If we as the church are not intentional about wrapping our arms around the young ones in our community, we will continue to lose them, and it will be incredibly difficult for them to come back. Another reason we might have to not invest in kids is that sometimes we might have a bias towards young people. If we're being completely honest, we might have bias towards young people. And maybe, especially some of us who've been around a little longer, we can see the situation, we can say, oh, I've seen this before. I know the answer to this. But if we take a step back, I think there are some tools, some practical tips that we can take to avoid making assumptions about young people. The first is that we have to practice our listening. In the book, The Great De-Churching, that came out earlier this year, one of the 5 things that they shared for reasons why young people are walking away from the church is because they don't feel heard. They don't feel listened to. One of the biggest things we can do to support the young people in our community is to practice being better listeners, to always be students of young people. I don't know a human alive that can't learn how to listen just a little bit better. Just like athletes and actors have to practice their skills, we too need to practice our listening better. I heard this great tip recently to help us better listen to young people. Do any of you have water with you this morning? Water or coffee or a drink? Yeah, I see Tom in the back there. Yeah, he's prepared. So, so the tip is this. When we're talking to young people, instead of jumping in with your thoughts, instead, take a sip of the drink in your hand. Take a sip of the water, take a sip of the coffee, pause, and invite them to tell you more. Instead of jumping in with your thoughts and your opinions, and you just pause, take a sip, and ask them to tell you more. The way that we listen to our young people directly influences their ability to feel like they belong. There's this beautiful quote that says, being heard is so close to being loved that for the average person, they are one and the same. So the way that we love is deeply correlated to the way that we listen. Jesus frequently responded to people with parables and with more questions than answers. Young people really do want to share their lives with adults, but they'll only do that when they feel like they are in a safe place. It's so important for adults to create those safe spaces for our young people. There's power in intergenerational relationships, and kids want to know that we are listening, and it is never too soon to start listening. Sometimes my 5-year-old daughter tells me I'm not listening to her, and you know what? She's right. She's right, and it's never too early or too late to start apologizing to kids for our tone of voice, for our temper. Kids need to know that they are loved, valued, and integral to the life of the church now. They're not just the future of the church. They're our youngest worshiping members now. And in order to do that, we have to become better listeners. As a church, we need to stop answering questions for them that they're not actually asking, right? And instead, we need to listen to them and the things that they care about. If you spend some time talking to young people, one of the things you'll hear them say is that they care about climate change. They care about justice. They care about equity and inclusion. And if we do our job right as the church and they stick around, this is the future of the church. Justice, equity, and inclusion. And I don't know about you, but that gives me hope for the church. The 2022 U.S. Census recently shared that Gen Z, those born after 1996, the up-and-coming generation, is already the most racially and ethnically diverse demographic of age levels we have in the U.S., over 50% of them are of color. So young people too bring diversity. This last week I asked our staff at staff meeting, what do you love about young people? And as their eyes lit up around the table, the words they used to respond were their creativity, their passion, their energy, their vibrance. That's the church I want to be a part of. That's the church of the future. So how do we do it? I bet you're sitting there thinking, okay, Pastor Stacie, now what? All right, how do we do it? How do we pass on our faith and help our young people know that they have a place here? How do we help them know that all means all kids and youth too? Well, our job is to meet these kids where they're at. In a world that's placed more demands and pressures on them than has ever been seen before, to meet them where they're at, to commit ourselves to listening better, to create spaces of belonging where they are seen, they are known, and they are loved. There are lots of places where kids can find belonging. They don't have to come to church to find community. Gosh, but wouldn't it be great if they did? If they found community where they knew that there is a God that loves them and a church community who only reinforces that by the ways that we support them. Wouldn't it be great for them to find belonging in a church that wants them to flourish? Pastor Adam Hamilton at the Church of the Resurrection in Kansas City likes to say, people don't come to faith because of our superior theological arguments. They come to faith because somebody loved them in the church. They felt welcomed and cared for. They felt their children loved and cared for. So here's what we're doing. Here's what we are already taking steps towards as a church community. The first is through our family worship Sundays, where children are invited to come to worship with their parents. Our children's church ministry is vibrant and only continues to grow. We've gone from around 30 kids a Sunday to averaging 90 every week within just the last couple years. And anytime someone asks me, what is the secret ingredient? How is this possible? I tell them that 1,000% it is the adults who show up every week that are committed to loving these kids. They know their names, they know their families, they know what these kids care about, they know their prayer requests. The adults are the secret. That's not really a secret at all. The adults are what continues to grow our children's ministry. Their love for these kids and their families is inspiring, and the relationships they form with the kids will have a lifelong impact as these kids continue to grow. The high fives, the fist bumps, the hugs, the baby snuggles, these kids know that without a shadow of a doubt how loved they are when they attend children's church. And so, as mentioned, as you already know, we still are intentional about inviting kids into worship with here and taking some Sundays as an entire community to invite the kids to come and join us. To see the adults in their lives worshiping and learning and growing together. When children join us in worship, our entire community is invited to play a part in spiritually discipling these kids. When kids are wiggly and they're dancing around and they're noisy in worship and you respond to them and their families with warmth, that tells the kids that they belong here and that they are celebrated. That tells their families that they belong here, that kids are meant to be seen and heard. And we work hard to make our worship spaces places they feel welcome. And you are a big part of that. Each and every one of us is. One other thing we've been doing is offering more parents' night outs because we recognize that parents are more exhausted than ever. It can be hard to even begin to spiritually disciple your kids when you are in survival mode. When we care for the entire family, parents included, we are caring for our kids. Our next Parents' Night Out we're offering is on November 11th. It's at our Amity campus. If your family or you know a family that could benefit from this ministry, we want to invite you to pass along this information to them. We have a digital bulletin, I think Pastor Dwayne mentioned. You can scan that and get more information on your way out as well. Another area that we're investing in that I'm really excited about is a new partnership that's going to begin in January. So we recently hired a new children's director at our Amity campus, Brittany Rell. And when we hired her, we looked at the growing trends of young people that are leaving the church right now when they graduate, but we also noted the rapid decline and the rapid exodus of young pastors and directors from the church. And we said, we have to be a part of the solution. We have to be a part of the solution. We have to be a part of investing in and raising up young leaders to reach young people to hand down the faith. So starting in January, Brittany will begin a 3-year master's degree program through the Center for Youth Ministry Training, where she'll have the opportunity to learn from professors who are on the cutting edge of research for age-level ministries in the church. She'll be partnered with a seasoned age-level ministries mentor and will combine her studies with hands-on ministry experience to the children and families at our Amity campus. She'll spend time flying out to Nashville and Texas for a couple days at a time, every couple of months, to be in person with other students in the program for in-person learning, and then we'll learn remotely in between. Investing in young leaders and young people like Brittany will change the future of the church. One other ministry, we have lots of ministries that I would love to highlight for you in our age level programs to try to help bridge this intergenerational gap we're seeing. But the next one, the final one for this morning I'd like to share with you, is a ministry that our youth director, Alex Schreiber, began. He started it on Monday mornings here at our downtown campus, and Alex and I have continued to have conversations about the statistics of the growing distrust and discomfort of youth being in our worship spaces. For many teens, their experience with Cathedral of the Rockies might be their first interaction with the church. So think about that. They park along the sidewalks here, all around our building. They walk in front of our entrance 5 days a week. Right across the street here, we have Boise High School. When Alex first interviewed here, I remember telling him that our location makes this a youth director's dream. This is fantastic. They're literally across the street. What a gift to be in such close proximity with Boise High. And then when he got here, we started thinking through ways to not only break down the barrier of distrust so many youth may have with the church, but also how do we as a church create sustainable, ongoing relationships with the youth at Boise High? How do we help them know that they belong here? How do we love them just as they are without putting any additional expectations on them? So Alex came up with this wild idea. Go ahead and take a look at the screen.
Students have a huge amount of distrust in our institution, skepticism when it comes to Christianity because of so many things that have been done in Jesus' name that don't reflect the image of Jesus. It is so important for us as a church to reach these young individuals and to show them who Jesus truly is. Everybody has a version of Jesus in their head, whether it be through social media, whether it be through a book that they read, whether it be through their parents, but many students haven't actually understood or felt the love of Jesus the way that we understand Jesus today. I started Pugs and Pizza in February of 2023 in order to kind of bridge that gap between the institutional distrust that our students have and the local church in general. We started off in February with about 20 students, and it quickly grew to 50 students, 100 students, and then upwards of over 200 students. COVID really did a number of things to our students, academically, emotionally. Our students are not used to seeing adults care about them outside of the school district. So if an adult comes in, serves them pizza, and says, "I hope you have a great day," it could mean the world to that student who might be struggling at home, might be struggling at school, might be struggling with mental, physical health, so on and so forth. This ministry matters because this is an opportunity for us to show our students that we care about them. And it's an opportunity for us as a congregation, for us as a city, to see our students and to love them exactly where they're at.
What an incredible ministry. It has been so life-giving. If you come to our church any day of the week now, from Monday to Friday at least in the work week, you'll find that there are high school students that camp out on our lawn, like 15 to 20 of them every day. They have their lunch there. They come into our lobby as it gets colder out. They're going to be coming in. They come and get coffee from our lobby. Our church space has become a safe place for them to be. where nobody puts extra expectations on them. They know they belong here, they know that they're loved and they're cared for. And Alex doesn't do it by himself. He can't do it by himself. Ministries like this don't just happen. We never graduate from this mandate that God has given us to pass on our faith. Through different seasons of our lives, the ways that we invest in them might change, but the calling to love children and youth is a lifelong calling. It is part of being a faithful follower of Christ. And it is time for each and every one of us to invest in age-level ministries. And not just for a few of us, but I mean all of us. If we want our children, our grandchildren's children to know Jesus and to have faith, the work starts with all of us today. Research by Chap Clark and Kara Powell, shared in the book Sticky Faith, suggests that teenagers benefit from a 5-to-1 ratio where they can name 5 adults in their lives who support them with no strings attached. Which doesn't mean 5 adults following a kid everywhere they go, hear me out, okay? But it does mean that they can name 5 adults that are supporting them: an aunt, an uncle, a grandparent, a church leader, teacher, coach, family friend. One of the most significant ways that the church can help parents is providing adults to invest in their kids. So today is what is referred to as Children's Sabbath. It's a day that all across the world, United Methodist churches set aside to look at the needs of children and youth, and through prayer to discern how God might be calling us as a church to respond. When new members join our church, as we had this morning, very exciting, when new members join our church, they commit their prayers, their presence, their gifts, and their service to the life of the church. And this morning, I want to invite you into that space through the lens of family ministries. How might God be calling you to commit your prayers, your presence, your gifts, and your service to children and youth? Would you pray with me? God of all generations, would we all be better listeners? Reveal to us the ways we might need to extend warmth to the young people around us in our community. Challenge us to invest in young people as you have called us. Move our feet into action to create spaces of belonging for young people. And all of God's people said, Amen.
Thanks so much for joining us today, friends. We hope you enjoyed your time with us. If you're looking for more opportunities to connect, we want to invite you to check out the BSU game that's going on this coming Saturday. We have a section roped off just for folks from Cathedral, the Rockies, and there's still tickets available. So grab your friends, grab your loved ones, your neighbors, and go ahead and buy your tickets. So if you want more information about other things we have going on or more information about getting those tickets, feel free to check out our website where you can find more information. Thanks, friends. Have a great rest of your week.